Yes, Bergen County home prices are still rising, but looking at sold prices is like looking in a rear view mirror, you guys. So let's look at the numbers, the indicators that matter so we can get a better view of what's happening now and what's potentially going to happen. So, if you are a potential homeowner or if you are a homeowner just checking in on the value of your largest asset, you are in the right place, Bergen County homeowners. I'm Stacy Esser. Thanks for hanging out with me. This is your monthly market update. All right, so we're starting with prices. So we're looking at the year to date prices for sold residential homes in Bergen County through September. And we can see that essentially the buyers are keeping up with the sold prices. So you could see here average list, average sold, median sold. So for average list prices and average sold prices, they're up somewhere between 12%, somewhere about 12%. Okay, they're pretty consistent here. The median sold price is up about 10.4%. That makes a lot of sense. It's showing us obviously that the higher end market is affecting the average price. So this is somewhere in the middle, and it is showing you still have a lot of buyer demand when that price is right. Buyer demand when that price is right. The reason I'm saying price is right, and one of the indicators I think is so important for us to keep our eyes on, are the number of price reductions and the number of homes that are coming off the market. So what you're not seeing is the story that I want to talk about. The story I want to talk about is what is happening with homes when they're not getting the price they want. So you are still seeing houses sell at 10 to 12% above last year, but what you're not seeing are homes that are basically coming off the market because they're not getting the number they want. That is the untold story in these numbers. And that is what is consistently making our market look like we're the sellers are completely in control, because all you're seeing is, prices continue to rise, and you're seeing list prices and median sold prices pretty much in line with each other, as opposed to seeing list prices go all the way up here and sold prices all the way down here. The problem is what you're not looking at is the fact that when a house doesn't get its right price, it's either price reducing or more likely coming off the market and maybe relisting. So these numbers, although they show a market where the seller is saying, this is the price I want, and the buyer is saying, okay, I'll give it to you, that's not actually what is happening. What is happening is a little bit different, and that's why I want to give you the context of what we're seeing with boots on the ground. So let's go to the next slide. You see solds that are essentially flat, and then pendings that are just a slight dip but essentially flat. And really you have just a couple more new listings going on. You have a really good story as to why prices are continuing to rise, because the inventory is still very, very tight based on demand. And that's what's happening here, and that's what's keeping our market different. That's what's different about our market than maybe other national news talking about how other markets are maybe suffering. When you still have such a tight demand, such a tight inventory flow of product, you are going to have more pressure on pricing, and it's going to continue to keep the pricing at or above where it was. Until that supply shifts, we're not going to see any big moves in pricing. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're a buyer in the market and you're waiting for something to give. A cluster of challenges there for Bergen County and getting enough inventory to meet the demand, and that's what's keeping the pressure on pricing. So what it tells us is essentially how much did the house sell for to its original list price, and how much did the house sell from difference between its last listed price. We're still seeing that the houses, when they sell, are selling above their listed prices. So what this is telling me, and I know this because of the fact that obviously we're doing this all the time, is that when a house doesn't get the number it wants, it's actually typically a lot of sellers are just going to take the house off the market rather than reduce it and then sell it for 5-10% off of its ask price. How do you use this information? So If you're a seller, it's important to use this information to understand how a buyer thinks. So a buyer is looking at what is the typical difference of what a house is listed at and what a house is selling at. This is obviously an overall Bergen County number, but when you drill down to the numbers of different price points, different locations, then you'll understand sort of the buyer behavior of what they think they can get a house for or what they can't get a house for. And that will give you a better indication of sort of what your strategy should be as far as going on the market. But right now, this is a very, very strong seller market just based on these numbers for ratios of where the house is selling. The biggest indication of any shifting is coming in the days on the market, all right? So when you're jumping up 34 days, even though that doesn't seem like a lot, what is that telling us? When you put a house on the market and we're seeing there are less buyers potentially showing up, you have buyers that are waiting a little bit longer to make a decision, and you have more price reductions in a market and more houses that are like taking themselves off the market, you definitely have a little bit of a tug of war between buyer and seller. What we are finding, generally speaking, is that the higher end market is having way less of an affordability issue than the middle to the lower price point market. It goes back to just sheer how much can somebody afford, and does it make sense for them to dip their toe in the market. We are consistently losing first-time home buyers, and we're losing first-time home buyers to developers who are buying product instead of a first-time home buyer, and then they're turning it around and into a multi-million-dollar project. Or we're losing first-time home buyer opportunities to maybe somebody who's downsizing, who is cash rich, and they don't necessarily have to worry about a mortgage, or obviously they have more cash to offset that mortgage. With that said, there is some bright news. I am recording this in the middle of October, although this is year-to-date September, and we are seeing the lowest rates we've seen in months right now. So I'm going to just flip my screen here and show you guys. So this is just a mortgage news daily. You can see this, and I'm showing you here, we're at somewhere around 6.25%, but this time last year, we were hovering close to 7%. So that makes for a very big difference. This time last year, we were hovering close to 7% in rates. Just look at what I'm saying. Do you see over here? Right over here. So this is, let me move my little screen here. So this is what was going on last year. We literally just started climbing in rates, and we stayed overall pretty high throughout the spring season. And now this is again last September, October, and we've been coming down. Follow the mortgage rates, and you will find more buyers stepping in and continued pressure on pricing because people can afford more. So the overall theme for what's happening in the Bergen County real estate market is we continue to see strong pressure on pricing. Prices are continuing to go up. However, we're seeing slight shifts in days on the market. We're seeing more houses with price reductions and more sellers that are taking their houses off the market. What would make that change? That would change if the affordability issue changed, right? So if houses became more affordable, then things would loosen up. More inventory would come to market, more sellers would agree to sell their house. And how do we make that happen? Well, we make that happen by with rates coming down. Rates coming down will shake things loose, because think about it, and this will be the end, I promise, is buyers think about houses like they're buying a house price, but really what they're buying is a monthly payment. So when you break down a monthly payment, that's what we talk about when we talk about affordability. All right, so I am Stacy with the Stacy Esser Group, and I am happy you guys hung out with me. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I'm happy to do a deep dive into your local market and your local price point, as are any of my fantastic team members on the Stacy Esser Group, because we cover all of northern New Jersey. Thank you so much. Be healthy, be happy. Bye-bye.